Now the Treasury houses the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Finance publishes the national budget. Again, here's a link if you'd like to go and look at the national budget. So what does the Ministry of Finance do? It manages the finances of government, and therefore it needs data on government finances and spending. Why? In order to manage the finances of government, it needs to make predictions on what it thinks is going to happen in the future. So if we go into their publications, you can see they have projections of what they think is going to happen in the economy all the way up to 2014. So here we see what's actually happened, 2008, 2009, 2010. This data is published in 2012, so they've got an estimate of 2011 data as well as an estimate of 2012 data, and then forecasts for 2013 and 2014. Although we are sitting in 2013 now, the 2012 data won't be finalized because obviously they have to gather all that information until much later in the year and only probably published in 2014. So there's a bit of a lag as to when this data becomes available, when the actual data becomes available. But we can see that they have forecast. We've got here GDP at current prices. They've made a forecast here in 2011. We were sitting at just under 3 trillion. 2012, we expected to be just over 3 trillion, increasing to nearly 4 trillion by 2014. Sure, seems pretty good. But let me warn you that we're talking here about current prices, which means we've got inflation stuck inside there. In fact, what we see here is we've got inflation of 5.1%. Again, once we speak more about inflation and CPI, we'll talk, or once we know about these things, then we'll talk more about the difference between real GDP and nominal GDP, and the difference between GDP at current prices and GDP at constant prices. But for now, it's just interesting to see that GDP is increasing. What is GDP made up of? Well, household consumption, government consumption, fixed capital formation, also called investment, exports, imports. Remember, if we go back to our very first part of our videos, GDP is made up of consumption, investment, government spending, and exports and imports. Oops. So, back to where we were. Right. In order to manage the finances, Treasury makes projections about what they think is going to happen. What data do they use? Well, they still use the data gathered from Stats SA. And we can see over here, employment trends by age and education level, 2008 to 2011. Source, Stats SA, quarterly labor force survey. Thought you might be interested in this, being university students. What happened to employment? Well, people between the ages of 15 and 24, from 2008 to 2011, if 2008 is the base year, employment in this age group, in your age group, has decreased by 25%. That's huge. Compared to the base year. And employment 25 to 34, 35 to 64, that stayed fairly constant. It's not like we're increasing the number of people that are employed as a percentage. And what about primary educated people? Dropped by nearly 30%. Secondary education, constant. Secondary but have not completed, constant. Tertiary education, in other words, university people, you can see your employment has actually increased since 2008. Good sign. This is why you are at university. Sorry for all the other characters. Where am I going? Right. So that's the Ministry of Finance. They get data on government finances and spending, and that data, most of it, they get from Stats SA anyway. But they do put together the national budget. The link is over here. What they can tell us is similar to what Stats SA can tell us, breakdown in terms of spending, except here we're looking at government spending. Previously we looked at household spending. What does the government spend the most on? Education. Consistently. 2008, 2009, 2010. And then going forward, they are expecting to maintain high levels of spending on education, which explains why households then, when we were looking at this diagram here, why households spend so little on education. because government is doing the spending for us. What's next? Social protection. In other words, social grants. So if you're wondering about why our infrastructure, green, is crumbling, it's because all the money is being redistributed. Social grants and education infrastructure is not a key concern. Nor are economic services and environmental protection. Does not bode well for the future. So that's what they're spending on in the economy, but where does most of government's money go to if we're looking at what they spend it on? Goods and services, investment, or paying government employees? Well, yeah, you can see most of the money goes to paying government employees. Of that amount that they pay on goods and services, this red block here, here's a breakdown of what they spend it on. Most of government's money goes to paying fat cat politicians. No, they also pay public servants, those people in Home Affairs who do such a sterling job of helping us get our ID documents and things like that. 2009, again from our McConnell book, you can see that if we look at a pie chart, once again, government spending, the majority was on education. Where does government get its money from? Well, it's a large chunk of it from us, people, normal income tax payers, not you university leeches, not adding anything to the government, and then companies who add a large amount of tax, and then value-added tax. Okay, so varsity students, when you buy things, you have to pay VAT, so you do contribute some of our government's revenue income. Right, let's take another break.